My argument is the red pill advice is dog shit because it's only applying to 1% of men. It honestly sounds like they're talking about like children. Like that's what it feels like. Like almost everything you describe.
Sometimes women act like children.
And men don't?
Yeah, some men do act like children, yeah.
Okay, so that statement you just made was pointless.
That's why,
you just said a whole bunch of shit.
I just said, hold on, as far as the market changing, and you say that the red pill community basically says that men just need to stay the same and not adjust to the market. No, that's not true. That's literally not true. I can quote you so many people in this space where they say so many things that get on your purpose, become successful, increase your value, and you know, like that's a normal conversation.
That's not space. Normal. Or it's a normal conversation.
Hold on, wait, hold on. Even the example that you gave that we rolled in on when you talk about, you know, fresh and fit, like, yes, they acknowledge all the bullshit in the market. They acknowledge what men are legitimately up against, but their philosophy is a philosophy. And I mean, I personally don't think I don't think it will really work. But a lot of what they're saying is that they're basically telling guys, you know, go out there and become super uber successful and be one of the top percentage of men. That's ultimately what they do when they do their shows that where they don't got the women on there. They do something called Money Mondays and all of that stuff where they're trying to basically, you know, give men the tools that they need to do better, because they're like, the market isn't going to change. The women aren't going to change. You got to beat the market. And that's pretty much what what a lot of people
I understand what you're saying, but like says. That advice is
so acknowledging the change of it, acknowledging how these women is, that ultimately arms men with the tools that they need in order to go out there and compete in the market.
Okay. So I disagree with the last statement. So when you say, what is the red pill advice? My argument is the red pill advice is dog shit because it's only applying to 1% of men. And even on Fresh and Fit, the last time I was on there, not this was the time before that.
That's why
you said a whole bunch of shit. So I'm going to respond.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with you. That's okay. Why I said it won't work, because I think you're being a good dating coach and a life coach if you tell a man, hey, get out there and become a top 5%er, but you're being a shitty social scientist, because every man is not going to become a top 5%er.
Sure. So when
every man is not going to become a top 5%er, you do got to look at the overall market and what's going to happen to the regular Joes at the bottom and in the middle. In the middle. Okay, go ahead.
When I've been on these shows, they've admitted that their advice only applies to the top 1% of men, right? So if all of your shows are geared around giving advice to the top 1% of men, right? And as you said, like, they want you to go out there, be uber successful, gain uber amounts of money. Not most people can do that. Like 99% of the people listening to your shit are not gonna be doing that. So that advice is garbage. It's not good advice. And when you're gearing everything around like, oh, well, this is how you can pick up women by being a 6-figure guy that's, you know, super tall, gets jacked in the gym, whatever. It's like, okay, well, 99% of your audience is being, not only are they being left in the dark, they're being turned down like a really dark black pill incel path, because now all they're being told is like, if you can't hit these standards, women won't fuck with you. Women are hypergamous. Women naturally select for the top man. None of this is even true, by the way, but they'll say this over and over and over again while telling their audience the only way you're ever going to get these women is to be as successful as we are. When you talk about how like they want to elevate men and they don't want men to be like, well, no, you said a bunch of shit, so now I'm going to say a bunch of shit. That's how it's going to go. Okay, yeah.
Goddamn. How many points? How many
3 points? Only 3 points, because when I started writing, because you want to talk a lot, right?
Points.
When you talk about like growing men to be something better, that's what I would talk about. This is 2023. We need to grow men to be better, to adapt to the modern age. But all I hear red pillars speak about is traditionalism. These guys are obsessed with Islam now. Okay, they want to go back to the Stone Ages. Like, women need to go back to this, men need to go back to this. In order to succeed as a man, you got to be traditional and do blah 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 blah. Wait, shit. Did he dip? Wait, did he actually just leave? Oh,
my bad, bro.
I'm sorry.
I was trying to pull up a notebook so I can type and write. Oh,
gotcha. Yeah, you're good. Okay. It feels like they're saying traditional. Like, I don't think traditional is the way to go as a man now. You got to adapt. You're in a modern age, right? You have to adapt to the current day. The way that you would get a woman today is not the way that you would get a woman 40 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago. And then the final point.
That's why they say be better
be better how? Be top 1%? That's not real advice.
I agree.
Okay, then we agree that they give dog shit advice. That's good. Okay. The final point, and then you can respond. The final point was, you're talking about how they're arming men to succeed. They're not arming men to succeed. They're barely talking about how top 1% men can women. I have never in my life, and maybe I'm just missing the conversations, but I've never in my life heard these guys talk about, like, how do you get in a relationship? How do you maintain a relationship? Right. What should you look for in a relationship? It's always like, these are how you bang hoes. This is how you get chicks to this is the Bugattis that you need to buy to get the maximum number of girls riding your that's the only thing I hear. How is that helping men to succeed when the advice is so hyper-targeted and it's only targeted towards hookup culture and not actually getting and maintaining relationships? There you go.
All right. So I do want to make one thing clear. And I've said this on my show a number of times, that if somebody is giving advice that's only going to work for the top 1%er, they are not giving good overall broad advice. And I just said that before you came up here. I don't think that somebody should listen to them for their overall general game advice. There's aspects of it that I've always said that I disagree with. I think when they're arguing the points, the views, the sentiments of men, I think they're typically getting it right. The majority of the time when they're analyzing how women operate, how the market has changed. The part where I think you're getting it wrong is that you're saying that the space overall is just hell-bent on traditionalism and doesn't give modern advice. The space came into existence basically because it's giving men modern advice on how to deal with how modern women are operating. That's what the space does. And you're straw manning it by saying that it's just a bunch of people just basically saying, become the top 1%er. There is an emphasis on success and being all you could be and being the best. And you even talked about that when you saying that a man is going to have to do more. Yeah, part of that more that he has to do is become more successful and build himself up. There is some character things and personality things you haven't substantiated that men are lacking in the character and personality department. You haven't fully substantiated that. You're basically just operating on faith that men just have terrible personalities and they're just awful. I mean, I know you said that you didn't say that, but those are the practical implications of what you're saying if you follow the logic all the way home. So you're operating on that assumption, and then when people are trying to ultimately essentially say that this is how you adjust and maneuver in this modern market because it doesn't operate the way that it is, you would then accuse them of being stuck on some type of traditionalism, when the reality is they're not being 100% stuck on that. They would like things to go back to that. A lot of people, myself, I would like things to go back to something more traditional, but I understand the practical reality of what things are, and it's just generally not going to work that way. It's just generally not going to work that way. But to say that trash advice is being given, I don't think you've substantiated that. I think you've typecast and strawmanned and basically saying that's this whole space is saying be the top 1%er and you will get chicks.
That's basically what it feels like to me every time I listen. Is like, you got to make yourself successful, you got to become a high value man, and then once that happens, like, the girls and shit will follow.
So do you deny that simple point that if you become more successful that you will have an easier go with women? But there are other ways to win.
Well, sure, but I mean, like, also if you pick
there's a lot of guys that talk about your game. And when you're talking about game, I mean, I look at it as just social skills and simple do's and don'ts when dealing with women. Like, so that's a big part of what they talk about, or what a lot of people in this space talk about. So that's why I don't understand exactly what you mean when you're essentially saying that the only advice is to become a top 1%er. If you become a top 1%er, yeah, you dunked on the goddamn game. You won. But within that, yes, the way that you maneuver, the way that you operate, those are things that people talk about all the time when it comes to dealing with women. So I don't know how you could just stereotype it or straw man it into being just this one thing. That's a very convenient trap to try to set.
Okay, so here's a question. From all the entire red pill space, what is like a couple of pieces of advice that they give for maintaining healthy relationships?
Okay. When it comes to maintaining healthy relationships, they talk about you do need to be the leader. You do need to operate and move from a position of power. Women do like a man who's in control, so they talk about it from that perspective. I definitely talk about it from that perspective. I talk about it from the perspective of, if you're dealing with the woman, make sure you're dealing with the woman on your terms. If she agrees and complies to your terms, and then you have your two people moving forward in the same direction that actually agree, that are working towards a common goal, that she's following your lead. Because a woman, I mean, we can talk about all this egalitarian stuff all we want. The fact of the matter is, a woman wants to be with a man whose lead she could follow. And so you need to be the leader. You need to be in control. You need to manage the situation at every end and every turn. So yeah, those are the simple things that I say. And I'm no dating coach or game coach, but those are just the simple things that I say to make sure that you're doing it on your terms. That's more or less. And the women who rock with you, who like with you, or the woman who rocks with you and likes with you, she will typically comply to your terms. And once that's established and once that's going on, then you can maneuver within there. Like it's a multivariant analysis of advice. And I think, I mean, it's easy to just pinpoint one thing and just say, that part is bad. The part that you pointed out that's bad, is the part that I agreed is bad if that's the whole of your advice. But it's not bad advice to increase your value. It's not bad advice to become a top 10%er. It's not bad advice to become a top 15%er. That's not bad advice. It increases your options. It increases your reach. It increases what you will be willing to do, and so are able to do, and you will tolerate far less when you become more successful. So that part of it is not a bad thing, and I don't know how you could even look at that as a bad thing. The only way you can say that that's a bad thing is if you build a straw man and say that's the only thing, and that's not the only thing.
Yeah, so I guess the issue that I have is that, and this is broad, and we don't have to get too deep into this because this will be a whole other conversation, but when I hear red pillars talk about women, it honestly sounds like they're talking about like children. Like that's what it feels like. Like almost everything you describe.
Sometimes women act like children. Yeah.
And men don't?
Yeah, some men do act like children, yeah.
Okay, so that statement you just made was pointless. Sometimes women act like children, but sometimes men act like children. So the real answer is sometimes people act like children, right? But that's not what you're saying. When you're saying you need to be a leader, you need power, you need to be in control, you need to deal with them on your terms, like it sounds like you're either talking about training a dog or raising a child. Like that's what the advice sounds like, broadly speaking. And when red pillars talk about relationships, that oftentimes feels like what they're talking about. But again, I would argue that this sort of view of a relationship is highly traditional. I don't know if this is as applicable in the modern day world. And I hate to come across as like a blue-haired, blue pill, gay, whatever the fuck, but like when we talk about like relationships, I think that the emotional expansion of what men are capable of is like the big frontier that they need to push into. The idea of this like be a leader, take control, all of this stuff, like the dog raising strategies, that's some shit that might have worked like 50, 60, 70 years ago, but I think you have to bring more to the table than that.
Okay, but one thing is hard to change is nature, and I'll just speak personally. My woman likes to follow my lead. She likes to look up to me.
Is this a rage quit? Is the day?
I can't say to this guy, dude.
That's today. If all women took a day off today, no one would give a shit.
Better how? Be top 1%? That's not real advice.